Okay, so today is 2-1, integers and absolute value. This is something we did in 7th grade. My 7th graders, we did this. This should have been your first lesson last year. Your first absolute lesson. 7th graders that came from up north, this was probably in October for you. Okay, I did mine a little different than Mrs. Denowden did. So, this is one of the first things you should have learned last year. It's actually one of the easiest things you learn in 7th and 8th grade, but a lot of times we forget. We forget. Absolute value, the easiest thing you will learn in 7th grade and 8th grade, but it is the most forgotten about, okay? Just so you know. Now, let's talk about what an integer is. Because an integer is a really important thing you're going to see from now until, I don't know, you're done dealing with numbers, which probably be when you die, actually, because you will deal with numbers until you die. It's in your bank account, it's on the clock, it's whatever else. You're going to deal with them forever, okay? Does anybody know what an integer is? Hannah? Or? Not on the number line. Okay, what else can you get more specific, Hannah? Positive or negative. It can also be a negative number. So anything I said is really true. Can it be any number? Not necessarily. Any whole number, yes, but not any number because decimals aren't integers. Fractions aren't integers. Just whole numbers, positive and negative. Yep. Yep, it does, and I'll talk about that in a second. So, I have quite a few definitions up here for you. Now listen, do you have to write all of these? No. Do you need to know at least 2 of them? Yes. You need to know integers because that's important. And if you want to write, instead of this definition, if you want to write positive and negative whole numbers, be my guest. If that makes more sense to you, write that. Integers are positive and negative whole numbers. Now up here, I also have positive and negative numbers. You should not need to write that down. You know what a positive and negative number are. But you do also need to know what absolute value is. Make sure you get that written in your notebook as well, because that's one of the main parts we're talking about today. And integers, positive and negative whole numbers. And absolute value, can I move that up for you guys? Is that all right? If I move this up a little bit, if I can get it, there we go. There's absolute value. And don't forget the symbol. Make sure you get the symbol written down. I guarantee some of you saw this on your STAR test, and you didn't know what it was or couldn't remember. All right, so let's talk about some of these that you did not write about. Okay, let's talk about positive and negative numbers. Positive, anything above 0. Okay, if you look up on my number line, yes, you can still use a number line even though you're in 8th grade. The positive numbers are up there are in black. A lot of times they are yellow, though. A lot of times they're yellow. Negative numbers are anything less than 0. And they're usually in red. If you've heard the term in the red before, I think we talked about this a little last year. If you're in the red, if your bank account's in the red, that's bad. Yeah, you're negative, right? 0 is neither positive or negative, but it's still an integer because it's a whole number. Okay, so that's why up there, 0 is gray because it's neither positive or negative, but it still is an integer. It is, I think it's gray, if you ask me. See it up there? Okay. Another thing you need to know for today is inequalities and what inequalities are. Okay? An inequality is something that compares 2 things. And we've used these before. You've used these forever. But I think the biggest thing about these is you can't remember which one's which. Okay? These 2 should not be new to you. These 2 should not be new to you. This one, less than. And I remember that because if I look at that, it looks like an L. It's facing the same way as an L. If I would tilt that a little bit, it'd be an L. Okay? That's how we remember less than. And a lot of you say, well, I know which way it goes because the bigger side goes towards the bigger number. You're right, but do you know what it's actually called? That's the thing. A lot of us don't know what they're actually called. Okay? This one, greater than. And this one's maybe new to you. These down here are maybe new to you. They are. Oh, you did? Oh, good. Okay. These mean two things. This one would mean less than or equal to. And this one is greater than or equal to. So don't forget those. Can I keep going? All right, so one thing they're going to ask us today is which number is greater, okay? And they might actually have us use the signs, but for now we're just going to talk about which one's greater. If you get confused with negative numbers and which one's greater, think of temperature, and we talked about this last year. Think of temperature. What's colder is always smaller. What's colder is always smaller. So if I ask you what's greater, negative 10 or negative 9, which one's greater? Negative 9, okay? The biggest one people get in trouble with are something like this. Which one here is greater? Which one's greater? Negative 5. The smaller one is negative 5.5, right? If I didn't have those negative signs, we know that this one would be greater. But if you are confused about those, and those are the one things people get confused, if you look up at the number line, negative 5.5 comes in between negative 6 and negative 5, right? That's where 5.5 will come in. And then you have negative 5. Well, which one's farther this way? That negative 5.5. So that one would be smaller, okay? Yeah, that's why it's there. It stays up all year round, forever. I've never taken it down. So, do you guys have questions on how to figure if something is greater or smaller? I mean, I feel like that you should know how to do that by now. Yes, no, maybe so? Yes, good. All right, so absolute value. This is the part that some of us get confused at, okay? What this says is, what is the absolute value of 4? Okay? The absolute value of negative 4 is 4. It's always how many spaces something is from 0. Whenever you have an absolute value problem, the answer is never negative. Never negative, okay? So if I ask you what's the absolute value of 9, 9. Okay, so here's the thing. Sometime you might see something like this. Is that negative on the outside of the absolute value bars? Okay. What's the absolute value of 2? 2. And then that negative drops down. That's the only time you might ever have a negative when it comes to absolute value, if it's on the other side of those bars. Yeah. Might be. So I'm showing you. I know there's some problems that something's close to this. Just because they want to see if you know the rule. They just want to see if you know the rule. I know. Sometimes that's the way they do it. They just want to see if you know. Sorry. They just want to test you, I guess. So, these are some things you're going to see today in your homework. So, if you need to write down an example, you better write down some examples with me. All right? So, they're going to ask you to solve these problems. And evaluating means what again? Solving, giving me an answer. So, what's my absolute value of 10? 10 plus 4 is 14. Okay? Negative 4 minus 3. What's my absolute value of 4? Negative. Oh my gosh, I gave you the answer. Okay, not difficult, right? But pretty soon they're going to get into bigger numbers. Yeah, question. Yeah, it's just what these bars say. It says, what is the absolute value of this number? So what's the absolute value of 4? -4, just before. And then you always keep this sign, and then, okay? No, anything in absolute value bars never becomes a negative. This is saying minus. That's not saying -3. Okay, that's saying minus. Here's one of those times that this might happen. 9 plus 7, 16. Then you bring your negative down. Okay? Okay. What about this one? 8 plus 2 is 10. Yep, 10. Oops. All right, so another thing you need to know are some of these words that mean these things. Negative and positive. If I were you, I would make a list. So negative, these are some words that mean negative. And those are some words that mean positive. Now let me show you how they're going to use this. Let me show you how they're going to use this. Oh, another one I'm going to put on here. Oh, I got it. Withdrawal. I guess on this side I should have deposit as well. I don't have that. You should get them jotted down because you're going to want to know them for your homework. I ran into 7th graders who didn't know what deposit and withdrawal meant. So that was one we had to talk about. Withdrawal means to take out of your bank account. Deposit means to put into your bank account. Okay? Anybody still need this yet? Okay. Take your time. I got about 10 minutes, yeah. Ready? Kaylee, good? Okay, so how they're going to use some of this is what they're going to say. They're going to say, write an integer for this situation. And they're going to say, 5 below par. And they're going to say, write an integer for that. What's an integer that describes this? Hannah? Not quite. -5. And 5 below. So this is why I gave you that list. So then you can say, okay, there's my keyword. I know it's -5. If I would say, let's say, 5 below sea level. Yeah, -5. If I would say I deposited $45 into my bank account, positive 45, because I'm adding money to my bank account. Okay, Hannah? No. No, I don't care about the positive sign. Because if you don't put it, I'm going to assume it's positive. If you don't have a negative sign, you got to have a negative, though. I don't know. You don't have to put the plus sign. That's fine. I don't mind. One other thing in your homework they're going to do today is they're going to say, okay, A is -1, B is 3, C is -5. And they're going to do this. Okay, so what would you need to do for something in this situation? Okay, first you got to put this in there, right? Okay, so then they say, okay, absolute value -1 is 1, 1 plus 4, minus absolute value of that. Well, that's easy, 0. Okay, so they're going to give you some things you need to fill in. Please rewrite it out. Please rewrite it out. I can't tell you, 7th grade took a test and they didn't rewrite problems out, and guess what? If they didn't rewrite them out, they probably got them wrong. please rewrite them out. And you know why some of them got them wrong? Because they would mix these up. It was like this, A plus B, and they did -1 plus -5. Well, is that what B is? Rewrite it out for yourself. John. Yeah, well, in this case, yes, because, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally says addition and subtraction go from left to right, so yeah. Yep, always, 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 always. Let's see. I think that's about it that I have. Do you guys have questions? Does anybody have a question on this? Can we order things from least to greatest? Can we do that? If I would give you a whole bunch of numbers, we can order them from least to greatest? Okay. Do you think you can? All right. Let's look at your homework.